All right, sounds good.
Chris Vandall. Or is it Christopher? What do you prefer?
Chris is
Chris.
good.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, man, I appreciate you doing this.
I'm excited to do this too.
Well, I don't
So,
know what we're going to talk about today, but I have known about you through Joan Wenzel, who is our mutual friend and colleague and former teacher.
yeah.
And I'd love to shout her name from the rooftops during this time if you wouldn't mind. But again, you're someone who I've known of tangentially through Murray Mast and Matt Dudak and some other people, sort of in Joan and in this sort of northwestern Ohio percussion scene. And I'm curious. Before we get into it, I want to ask you a question about
Sure.
why you responded to my sort of note on Facebook about wanting to do a podcast. What prompted you to respond, other than like, was there something on your mind at the time that was like, you know what, I'm gonna jump in on this?
You know, I had been aware of it. Sorry, my cat is going to be really loud.
That's okay.
He's deaf, and so he's like, yeah. So, but I'd heard a bunch uh, of the interviews,
Mm-hmm.
and I found them all to be really interesting. I remember when I was hearing about it, I thought, oh, it's going to be like, how much interest is there going to be in like talking about real nerdy specific percussion things? Like how long is that going to last? And I thought, all right, I'll give it a listen to it. And I was totally surprised at the topics you were hitting and talking about education, talking about race relations,
Mm-hmm.
talking about talking about percussion and composers and the process. But
Mm-hmm.
I was really impressed with just kind of like the gamut of what you were hitting, and
Mm.
I thought, wow, I think it's really interesting. I never really thought I had anything to add to that, but I thought it was like really kind of a cool platform,
Mm.
uh, and I always found it very enjoyable hearing what people had to say with questions that I wasn't expecting them to be kind of thrown their way. So, kind of kudos to you then about kind of opening it up and taking it into like really different places.
Well,
I thought that was interesting.
well, I
So
appreciate that, and it's something I have personally a lot of anxiety about, but I get a lot of I find myself growing and learning as a person the more I talk to people who I don't know.
yeah,
There's a woman named Mecca Rose who I did two podcasts with her, and I'm trying to hook up another one. She's from Atlanta, Georgia, and I met her through a podcast I was invited on called Soca Passion Live, which is usually like a DJ show it's in the like steel band world on Facebook. And he was hosting a discussion after the George Floyd murder in, was it June or May? I think it was June.
uh,
I think
yeah, early summer. I remember.
it was shortly after George Floyd was murdered, and I met her. She was a total stranger, and she came on the podcast, and we were talking about race relations, and she very pointedly questioned me about, like, I think her phrase was get your people, like, get your people.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember feeling like, oh, okay, I don't know what that means exactly, but um, what do you mean? And like, I don't think, like, I don't know how to do that, what you're asking me to do. And so then she responded, and it was with other people, so it was a little, it was tense, but it was very genuine, very, like, there's a lot of generosity back and forth. And so we had a second podcast. Come to find out, like, her brother was murdered by a cop in front of her family,
Oh god.
like, shot right in front of them. And we just talked and talked and talked, and I was asking her about things about, like, defund the police, and she's like, it was just like way more nuanced and complicated than what I was hearing in, on social media or in the media in general. And man, it's terrifying to ask a total stranger of a different race a very heated question. But anyway, I have found it to be incredibly rewarding, and I'm very. We're not here to talk about Mecca. I think if you want to listen to that podcast, she's awesome.
Yeah.
But I,
There is something about being vulnerable, though. I mean,
mm-hmm,
in those instances where there's a lot of fear and a
yeah,
lot of, that it kind of keeps us from doing things about going out, not really much on a limb, but just being vulnerable. Like,
yeah,
I have this conversation, and I don't know how I'm going to feel about it, and I don't know really the questions I'm going to ask or what answers I'm going to have, but like just wanting to kind of be with you in the moment of whatever this is. I
Mm-hmm.
think that breaks down a lot of barriers already. Of like, yeah, let's just kind of slog through this shit and like, see what happens. Like, let's just have an honest, real, authentic conversation. You know?
Yeah. Well, and today is, I mean, I kind of personally, I understand both sides of the equation when people are like, it's Black History Month and let's celebrate. And then the other side of the equation is like, isn't every month Black History Month? Shouldn't every, I mean, every month is White History Month. Shouldn't we?
Yeah,
And this
right.
is the beginning of I think it's International Women's Month.
Women's Month, right? March is international.
And so while at the same time, I feel like we should just be celebrating everybody all the time.
Mm-hmm.
In that spirit, our mutual friend Joan Wenzel, I texted her the other day and I just said, you're one of the strongest female figures in my life, and you were one of the first, other than my mother, obviously, or my
Yeah.
grandmothers. But like, I'm kind of curious for you. Like, can you talk to me? We don't have to dive right into this heavy sort of gender relation thing, but I have been thinking a lot about Joan because and just sort of like, what are the things I missed? What are the things maybe she wasn't telling me about her experience as a female percussionist and an educator in a time and in the steel band world? Like
Yeah.
she was in a lot of fields where there weren't very many like her. And
Yeah.
I've just been thinking like, okay, what did I miss in fifth grade? Did she say something that I wasn't aware of, which blinded me for the next 20 years of my life to what women were going through? Or was that just her approach? Like, I'm kind of curious for you, like, how have you been thinking about your studies with Joan, and just now that you're 30 years later, like what has been going through your mind, if anything, around this stuff? I know that's a very general, broad question, but
Oh, it is. But that I mean that's kind of like open ended. So yeah, I mean I remember I she was my first serious percussion influencer, right? I mean, so like
mm,
coming into Larry Snyder through her, coming into Michael Udow through her,
mm,
coming into playing legitimate percussion ensembles, like not just kind of cranked out drumline esque things for solo ensemble, but like that had some real structure to it. Like had a lot of textures, a lot of kind of sonic things to it. I mean, and taking them and playing them at Ohio MEA stuff, and then
mm,
going out to Chicago, to Midwestern. I mean, like she was the person who like opened up my eyes to, yeah, steel drums. Like I remember she had a steel drum in her office. I was like, that's pretty awesome. Like I
mm,
didn't know you could. I mean, how do you? What is that? I mean, and you can hear it. I would hear it on recordings and things, but like just like you know, four mallet marimba stuff. I mean, just like it was a whole different world. And the guy that I had was kind of there was as a seventh grader. He was he was the total antithesis of what Joan Wenzel was. I mean, he was gross. He was just like didn't take it seriously. Was all about kind of being in with the boys. And she got there, and it was a total change of like not just the percussion part, but just being a good person. Like
mm,
just being somebody who is like well read. And I remember I remember she would have discussions with some of the older guys when I was in there. They talk about literature. They were talking about uh, music. They would talk about history. I mean, seeing her is not just like somebody who would come in like, cool, I'm gonna like throw down these 26 rudiments that I'm supposed to learn,
mm,
and then she would just leave. But it was like she was there as a mentor in the truest sense of that. I never got a sense that she was, I'm here to make a statement. I'm here as the token female percussionist in a male dominated world so much.
mm,
But she just kind of came in, did her thing, but she did it in a way that was, there was this kind of quiet, um, I don't know, very focused way of doing things. I mean, I found that to be, um, as a shy kid, I was kind of a shy kid. I found that to be very welcoming. Like I didn't
mm,
feel threatened by her. I mean, obviously talents and things, but I found that kind of demeanor to be really kind of encompassing and kind of inviting for me as someone who's
You
kind of a quiet kid.
you mentioned shy. I mean, I was had to do some writing for this other project that So's working on, and we had to talk a little. We were writing about misogyny and sort of like what are some of the things that I've observed growing up, and
Hmm.
what are the what's the cases of misogyny I've witnessed? What have I been a party to? And then like and then what's masculinity? Like where does misogyny stop, and and masculinity sort of pick up?
Yeah.
And where those two things are. And when I think of like Joan, like she was the like she was a composer. She wrote every drum solo that our marching band played. She wrote from scratch. She did not buy it from anybody. She was
I
a
still have some of her original handwriting stuff of all the
Yeah,
shows. I
me
was
too.
like,
Me too. I've tried to make the way I write music out look like the way she writes music out. Like there was something about the way her handwriting, everything.
oh yeah,
She was the first person to give me a teaching opportunity and teach me how to teach.
okay,
She was the first person to introduce me to a person of a different color, Cliff. Like,
hmm
and so when I don't know, I'm just like, maybe I don't even know what question I'm asking. I just feel like I got a little hoodwinked by Joan because she's such a strong person, and I just went through my whole life being like, well, this is the way it always is, right? Like, and that's just sadly that's not been the case. And there's a part of me that wishes like we could just put Joan in a bottle and spray her everywhere, and like, you know, but that's also not a fair. I mean, she's a different person than everybody else. She had a different path. She also had incredibly supportive teachers like Larry, who
yeah, right.
and
It,
Cliff is very supportive. Like there's a lot of things that
yeah,
she was also in a community that was very supportive. The University of Akron in particular fosters a very positive sort of
absolutely,
family scene.
yeah. You talk about like Joan gave you these opportunities. I mean,
Right.
that was all one of my biggest takes from being at Akron to Snyder was like how much, and you talked about this. I forget whether it was with Murray or somebody, but how much he just like farmed out gigs to
Mm-hmm.
to you
Mm-hmm.
guys. Like, hey, we got, like one of my first things was playing for the Ohio Ballet. I was 20, and he's like, hey, you're gonna go play for the Ohio Ballet here. Yeah, you can do it. And I didn't show up late for the first rehearsal, like, and the guy who's like there, all the other players are from University of Akron or Cleveland State,
Mm-hmm.
and I come shuffling in with like vibraphone and like shit's falling off the top of it, and like the guys look at me like, what are you doing here? Like, why is this even a thing? Why is this student? And I was like, that was like, oh crap, I gotta get my stuff together. Like I worked my ass off for that next rehearsal, and
Mm-hmm.
it ended up being a great experience. It's like one of those things like you don't, I mean, I know a lot of professors would just kind of hoard them all and take them all. And he was so generous with that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think Joan was the same way. I mean, very generous with not just like her sharing what she wanted us to be able to do or experience, but like, I mean, but that was it. I mean, she was all about like, I have these things that I think are really cool and really neat, and I want to share them with you guys. Like, we're gonna do mallet ensemble, and like, I was like senior, halfway through my senior year, and she's like brought back steel drums. I think also we know. I mean, we're far enough apart in age that we knew her at different stages
Mm-hmm.
of her career too. So
Mm-hmm.
you may know a different Joan than I knew. I knew her coming in right out of Akron, and like
Mm-hmm.
this was her first teaching gig, and um, she was kind of learning what she could do with high school students, what she could do with administrators, how much she could kind of take on, and what she expected from students. Um, and I think that we came in when she came in there. Um, we didn't have a lot of kids who were like played mallets and read music.
Mm-hmm.
That way it was all snare drum, and we want to do drum set, and we would play timpani, and that was it. And I played piano. I had another kid who was like a piano guy, and I mean, so like they were like, all right, here's Mark and Chris. They get to play the mallet parts. Everybody else.
Well, your dad was it your dad or your mom was a piano teacher?
Yeah, both of them actually
Both.
were. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they
So
both were.
I never played piano growing up, and I think when you're talking about like four mallet marimba and stuff, like I didn't play any four mallet marimba. I was the guy that played quads, and I played snare drum.
That's right.
And I could read any rhythm you put in front of me. Maybe in high school I had hands for days. I don't anymore, but I felt like that was that guy.
Yeah,
And
so I came in from the other way. I like rudimental snare drum
mm,
and mallet playing, right? So like I didn't do any drum set. I couldn't play a beat to save my life until I got to college. So, but I was yeah. So I came in that way. So I was
well,
always
the the thing, I mean, the thing that is that I'm like that's interesting to me now at 41 and it's 2021. Joan was doing all this teaching in the context of a field where there was zero rep. Like there was, you could get Ballet of the Unhatched Chicks as a mallet quartet. You could get, Porgy and Bess arranged, whatever.
Mhm.
There was not. I mean, Afro Amaro. What was the Ali Pack Crescendo? I think is the other
Oh,
one.
crescendo. I mean,
Um,
yeah,
John
that
H.
was
John Beck, like Al Abel, like those. There were symphonic percussionists who had written simple pieces that were being played, right? But
yeah, some Coalgrass stuff. I remember.
right, there just wasn't a lot to draw on. So there was a little bit where, like, yeah, she was writing all this stuff out because she had to create her own content. And now I just like I look at teachers now and I think like, oh, you don't have it easy, but you have it different. Like you can go on
Right,
YouTube now. Joan couldn't go on YouTube and be like, here's 35 solos to pick from on
right.
the Darabuka. Now they have everything, and there's steel drum
Hmm.
solos written now, and there's way more steel band rep and all of that stuff. And
Well, and she would commission pieces. I mean, she commissioned pieces from UDAL for us that we performed.
mm,
I think at Midwestern, she commissions thing. I mean, Snyder wrote something for our high school group. I was like, I mean, that's amazing to think about, like the connections that she had, or that she was like, I'm willing to kind of just write and see, what's out there. I mean, and then UDAL came to a rehearsal of ours,
mm,
and like. And I think they're like, oh yeah, he's from Michigan, blah blah blah. It wasn't until I was like at Akron and like UDAL came and did like some master class stuff with that. I was like, hey, that's the dude that I saw when I was like a junior, and
mm,
he wrote this awesome piece that we got to like. It was this African welcome piece that was like completely different than anything had played about. We had to make our own instruments. We had to play these like these wooden hand things on the ground. I mean, it was awesome. Like
yeah,
it involved everybody in the group. She was like, all right, I got 22 percussionists. I need it for 22 people. Like she's like, no one's getting left out. And
yeah,
it's
yeah. Well, and she
really
also,
cool to think about.
yeah, and she did a good job too of sort of knowing how to get inside of an institution and build inside of it, like to build a steel band program. The one that she built that was there is still there, quite frankly. She's not running it anymore, but
Yeah.
in all of the talk today about what institutions can and can't do and how you have access to them, how you work inside of them, like she's all the things. Yes, she's white, she's from a small rural Midwestern town, all those things, but she built something that didn't exist prior, and that is the thing I feel like I've learned from Joan the most, is just sort of how to like have an idea and then bring it to life and deal with the
Hmm.
complexities that come from that. But was she always overly humble to you? Like refused to accept
Always,
praise at all?
always humble.
That drives
Oh,
me
I
nuts
mean,
about her. That's always the thing. Every time I talk to her, I'm just like, Joan, you gotta stop. You gotta
yeah,
say thank you once.
always so much. I
Yeah.
mean, like to the point where I mean, she would like still. I remember she'd be talking like I remember my dad. I think my parents were after a performance or after something, and they were really impressed with something. I don't know what it was, but I do remember the interaction that they had. My parents, especially my dad, was talking to her about something, and she's just like, "Oh, thank you, Mr. Vandal." Like just like it almost looked like she wasn't an adult. Almost, it was like
Mm.
this. Like maybe a 15 or a 14-year-old kind of like, oh, well, thank you so much. Like, got really, really humble. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like she's like, doesn't understand like what an amazing thing that she's like given these students in this tiny town of like that. I don't know, it's just always very humble though. I mean,
Yeah.
but she, and I remember going from high school to college, and like I was going to become a biology major. I don't know, I was going to didn't want to do music, but I was going to go to biology.
Mm-hmm.
But then after a year back, I came back. I said, told Joan, I said, I think I'm going to go into music. I thought my, I thought she'd be like, way to go, Chris. Yeah, you should do that. That's going to be like awesome because you love it, blah, blah, blah. She was the biggest devil's advocate. Like,
How old were you at the time?
I was like, I don't, I think I just turned, I don't know, I was, what, like 18? So 19.
Okay. All right.
I was 19. So I spent like one semester as a bio major. I came back during the Christmas break, found her, and she's like, okay, whatever else you can do, do that thing, or learn a trade. Do not become a musician. Like you have to like want to do this with and not want to do and not be able to do anything else to make it work. And I was like, wow, really? Like, is it that hard, or are you just trying to dissuade me from whatever?
Right.
You know,
Right.
like, but I mean, but I don't know. I mean, I remember feeling so hurt by that. Like, I thought you'd want, on my inside, I'm like, I thought you'd want me to do this. I love doing it. Like, I was good at it. I enjoyed it. I thought she'd like support me with that. But like that whole, like, don't do it. Not unless you do this, like all the other stuff. And then after I kind of got into it, then I think she kind of saw that I was like serious enough about it and doing well and like doing it for the right reasons, I think. And I don't know if there's right reasons or wrong reasons, but like I felt like when next time I'd seen her a couple years down the road that she was, oh my gosh, it's so great to hear how you're doing. Like it was a total turnaround, like.
Well, that's the thing as a teacher. I mean, do you teach now?
I do. Well, let's see. I teach actually. I'm a public school teacher. I teach 5th and 6th grade band. Before that, I was in the private. I taught. Yeah, I was teaching, 40 plus private students during the week. Yeah, but I've done that too. Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing as a teacher. I mean, I don't know how you would deal this. I don't know if employing this tactic with 5th and 6th graders is appropriate all the time. But playing the devil's advocate is sometimes an important tool. And I hate it when I know it's being done to me. But sometimes if it's done right, like it feels like Joan did, it's like you actually believe she believes that, and that makes you really genuinely think about. You're like, this person I look up to is telling me something counter to what I feel like I want them to tell me.
Yeah, right.
And that makes me think about something. And I don't employ that technique very well. The whole like don't do this sort of thing. I'm always like, oh, just like put your mind to it. And it's like there's a part of me that believes that. Like yes, I'm privileged. I've had a lot of opportunities sort of come across my door just because of knowing Joan Wenzel. Like I have steel drums in my house because of where I was born. There's like yes, I joined the steel band and yes, I learned my notes. Yes. But there are other people who weren't born in Dover, Ohio. If you were born in New Philadelphia, the year after Joan moved to Dover, you never played in a steel band.
Yeah.
That's just a truth. And
I only got it for basically one semester. Like she bought them, like, remember it was snowing when they came back. So it was probably January or February or something like that. And we played them. I played them for maybe 4 months. We did like we learned some tunes. We did a little recording in the cafeteria. We played a few concerts, and then like I was off to Akron, and then a year later I was playing in the Akron band.
Right. Well, but my point is that like sometimes I want to be supportive, but there are truths sometimes that are hard to deal with, and the truth that Joan was telling you is like being a professional musician, where your only money you're making playing music comes from playing music. It's just true. That is a very difficult. That's not how I make all my income, and I play more than a lot of my colleagues that I have, and I still make a very tiny percentage of my overall income is still from playing music. And I feel like in the field, I made something. I did it, and I have to check myself to be like, well, I can't just give the advice of like, if it's just give it your all. It's like, well, that's sure, practice 12 hours a day, but also be someone people want to be around.
Yeah.
Practice being a good hang. Practice making mistakes. Like all those things count too.
Well, and I think seeing Joan with her, with all the things that she was doing, right? She was arranging, she was,
Hmm.
she was performing, she was teaching. I mean, and Snyder, in some ways, in that same funnel of like, everyone, you're gonna take a year of drum set. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna play drum set. I didn't know it. I was like, I don't need to learn how to do it. He's like, you're gonna take it.
Yeah.
Like, and what I do for like the first 20 years of the teaching privately is like over half, well over half of my students were like, I just want to play drum set, man. I'm like, all right, fine.
Do you know,
I'm like,
do you know what
God
I
damn
do?
it, he was right.
Do you know?
Fuck.
Do you know
Like he was right.
other than teaching? You know what the thing I do when I'm playing music for money? Do you know the thing that I'm doing more than anything else? Sight reading.
Yeah.
Percussion gets asked to read pieces almost more than we get asked to play the pieces we know really well.
Wow.
And it's because there's more composers now who are studying, and you get paid to go to a school and they give you 15 pieces, and you spend 20 minutes on each, you give them some comments and you move on. Like, you're not doing a premiere. It's not a collaboration really. It's
Yeah.
a
Okay. Yeah.
tiny class setting.
Professional sight reader,
But
huh?
like, bro, they give you a piece and you've got mallets, and it's just like, and I think back to Larry, and I think to those sight reading classes he would make us all do, where we all, like, as a freshman, you came in, you got to sight read to an empty room, but the
Right.
grad
Right.
students, but then you got to
Okay.
sit down and watch everybody, and that was horrifying, and I hated it.
Okay. So I absolutely loved that. I loved sight reading. I loved being like, I, I just loved it. I was like
Mm.
exhilarating. It was like I was like there was no pretense. I wasn't expecting to do anything. It was
Mm.
like I'm just going to come in and crap all over this thing. And most times they did.
Well, but that's, but it's like the thing. I feel like if I could tell students, they're just like, I want to be a professional steel drummer. I'm like, okay, fine. Don't even worry about steel drums. Just practice sight reading, because it doesn't matter what you're doing. You're gonna have to get good at somebody handing you a piece of music, and you have a very little amount of time to
Yeah.
prepare it. Well, let me ask you, like, as a fifth and sixth grade band teacher, like, what was your goal as a, like, when you were studying music? What was your, and I don't want to imply that being a fifth and sixth grade band director wasn't your
Oh,
dream job, because I don't want
oh.
there to be any implied thing there. Because if So Percussion disappeared tomorrow, I would teach fifth and sixth grade band in a heartbeat. They were my favorite group of people. I felt like the most impressionable group. Like, I can teach college kids, but that cake is kind of baked by that point. High school
Yeah.
kids have armpit hair now, and they're more interested in like how they smell and what the other sex looks like. But fifth and sixth graders, they have a sense of humor, but they don't know, even they don't know which end of the blow in the clarinet. And you're like, oh right, I can really,
Yeah.
I just felt more power there. And so for you, but like, what was your goal in school?
So I remember getting to school and like I all I wanted to do was play in a percussion ensemble, right? I was like, I just want to play. I want to play new music. I want to go around and I want to be with a quartet or a quintet or a trio. I'm just gonna like, it was like I just want to play new music,
But
dude.
why though? Was there a group that you were looking to?
There wasn't. Well, I remember like so
I mean,
I think I found
MTV
songs
wasn't playing Nexus and like Amadinda or anything like
right.
that's
No.
not what was on
Okay. So
MTV.
like I had found like I'd found percussion group out of
Hmm.
Cincinnati, Cremata. I heard some of those recordings. I was really into some of those things. And I thought that was really great. I wasn't so much into like the drum corps thing. I wasn't. I
Hmm.
mean, not that you can make a profession from there, but I was thinking like what I want to do. I was like, that's all I want to do. I don't want to learn drum set. I want to like, you know, I wasn't thinking about becoming an orchestral person. I was just like, I just want to like be with hang with friends of mine, and we're just going to learn new music type of stuff. And it's interesting because I mean, there was a part of my life where I was like, after I moved back to Ohio, and I kind of got met up with some guys like Judak was there, and Bill was there, and who else was there? Nightsky was there. I mean, so we like kind of got this group together. Like had their group going. They asked me to come in and play a few things. I did. It was great. I was like, wow, this is like what I dreamed about doing when I was there. But I'd already I was married now. I had some kids, and it was like really hard to kind of get away. But
Hmm. This
um,
is Acros, by the way.
this is Acros,
Yeah.
right? And it was like amazing. I loved doing it, and then I kind of, then the kind of the waves kind of took me out of that again, and I kind of backed out of it and started, um, I started playing some shows actually up in Cleveland. I kind of fell into a gig there. So now there's Chris. Never going to play drum set, Dr. Snyder. Now I'm playing 2.5 years of
Yeah.
a set, of a gig up in Cleveland, like playing drum set. That's it. I'm like,
Careful what you wish for.
no kidding, like,
I'm
but
never gonna have a job with $1 million salary and a memory
right.
memory foam bed. Like
Please,
that's what I should have said to my teachers when I was young.
where I'm wrong, right? No, but I mean, in teaching, I remember saying I'm never going to be not going into education. And my parents, when I told them I was going to performance, well, like maybe you might want to think about an education degree. No, just performance. That's all I want to do. I just want to play. I just want to like get in there and just do it. And actually, there were a few that I was doing some private teaching in the area, and I was getting frustrated with kind of what stories I was hearing from my own students about what they were doing and what was going on in the band situation. I remember thinking to myself, I don't know. Not that I can do everything better than everybody else, but I'm sure I could do something better than what I'm hearing now. Like, not that I needed to prove myself, but like, I wonder. I was getting like a little frustrated. Like, man, if I got in there, here's what I would do, and I would do this and I do that. So that got me starting to think about education as a vocation. Something to do. And it was after about 7 years of thinking about that, and finally getting to a point where our youngest son was starting school, that I decided to go back and get my teaching certificate. So that's what I did. And yeah, I love what I do. I love being in with students. I love being kind of surrounded by them and watching them come in and not know much of anything and get really excited when they, like when clarinet players can play first 5 notes of a B flat scale and they don't squeak, or like, like trumpet players can actually go up and get the high C, like for the first time. I mean, stuff like that is really, really exciting as a teacher to see them do it. Right. It's not, there's not a lot of like, look what I did. Look what, it's really just like encouraging them, giving them some tools, and then just like encouraging them to like do it.
I mean, teaching sometimes can feel like my uncle worked for the water department in Dover, Ohio. I remember listening to him sort of lament about like digging ditches. I'm just a ditch digger. It's like, yeah, but I mean, there's water flying everywhere, and you go in and you take that pipe out and you put a new one on, and then the water can flow another 10 feet without flying everywhere. And sometimes that's what teaching can feel like. Like you can see a student and you're like, holy crap, there's a water main break. And my job is just to get the old pipe out and put the new pipe in, or reroute the pipe around the broken pipe so that the water can flow. And it's different for every student because every student's plumbing. Maybe I should get off the plumbing analogy, but like every student's wiring is slightly different, and your job isn't necessarily to show them how awesome you are all the time. Sometimes it's just to be like, let me grab this wire, and boop, and then it's like maybe then like 3 days later they're like, oh, this is what you meant, and you're like, yes, and you didn't do anything, but you did do something they couldn't do for them, and that is important.
It is. There is a lot of like trying to figure out ways to, because that's probably one of the most frustrating things is like having a student and what they need to do. Like if there's a trumpet player and their embouchure is like way, way, way off, and their lip position is, and you're trying to get them to like change it. Like, man, and the 2-3 different ways that you've tried already is like not working, and now you're like, okay, there's got to be another way I can explain this. How do you like, like, I'm not a brass player. I mean, so like a lot of this, I'm like, okay, I've got to ask my brass player, player friends, or I'm like going online and looking at videos and like, what do they do? What's going on? And like finding a new way. So it's like, so you're taking that opportunity to kind of better myself, but like, okay, I need some more information here to give these guys, So,
well,
I mean,
the fact that you're in, I mean, I want to ask, actually, while you were talking, sorry, I was listening, but while you were talking, something popped in my head. There's been a lot of discussion. Where are you teaching right now? What school district?
I teach in South Euclid Lyndhurst, which is a east side suburb of Cleveland.
Okay, and what's the sort of demographic makeup of the school overall?
Oh, let's see. It's probably, at my school, I teach in the 5-6 building. Let's see. So when the 4, 5, and 6 were together, I think there were 800 students in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty large. It's probably, I don't know, maybe 65% African American, 35% Caucasian.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see, it's sort of like I live in Cleveland Heights, which has the same kind of demographic. It's a little bit larger, but it's probably there's probably maybe upwards of 80, maybe 80 to 70% of the students qualify for free to reduced lunch. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so it's
Okay.
it's an inner ring suburb with
Okay.
its issues like that.
All right. On a side, do you know Chester Englander by any chance?
Chester Englander? No.
Englander. He's a percussionist. Plays cimbalum. I
Oh
think
yeah.
he
Oh
lives
wow.
in Shaker Heights, I believe. He's a really nice guy. Just a side note, you should look him up if you're
Okay.
looking for another cool musician to hang out with. But I want to ask you, like, one of the things that we're talking a lot about in college education stuff is diversity, makeup, representation. What does our field look like?
Mm-hmm.
Should we change that makeup? Is the current makeup bad? And if so, how do we change that? And I've all I've had a problem a little bit with the sort of, I won't say a problem. I think we need to figure things out so there's more equity, all that stuff. I have been frustrated with the approach of starting at the top and hoping that that's going to solve things in the long run, because we're at the top of the tree and you're just taking the old leaves off and stapling new ones on and hoping that the tree's not going to die, when in fact this stuff starts in 5th grade. It starts
Mm-hmm.
in the way that instruments are presented to students. Do you shuffle all the girls over to the flutes and all the guys over to the sousaphones and the drums? Is that what you do as a teacher? Is what you do? Do you have duplicate instruments of heavy instruments so that kids don't have to lug them on the bus? Like, how that unfortunately means you got to wait 20 years and you got to keep working in 6th grade and then 7th grade and then 8th grade. And you got to keep doing in 5th grade every year that you did that first year you tried the new thing, and it'll take 20 years to see the results. It's just quicker to be in college and be like, we had this consultant, we have this new initiative, and I think we should be trying things in higher ed. But I'm curious, from your standpoint, what are some of the biggest barriers, or maybe not even barriers the right word, what are some of the biggest things institutionally that you see in the way education is run in the United States, in your own particular experience, that may be keeping the tree from being healthy 20 years down the road? Like, what can we do now in 5th and 6th grade band that will, also don't want to assume that everybody wants to be in band, but
Right.
if a 5th grade kid who's on a free lunch program because their family can't afford food for lunch wants to play bassoon and vocals are $900,
Right.
that means something. So I don't have an answer here, but like, I'm curious for you, how are you thinking about this stuff?
No, so I mean, one thing that we're starting to do in our district now, I mean, and it's a district that maybe 10, 12 years ago, it was from what I've heard, it was a different district. People are like, oh, it's a completely different district. I think there was probably a little bit more affluence there.
Meaning different, meaning more white and less black.
Okay, so it was more white. It was
Mm-hmm.
probably people that had a little bit more disposable income,
Mm-hmm.
probably parents, maybe families that had two parents instead of a single parent. So there's a working issue.
There were fewer cash checking places in the neighborhood. There were fewer fast food joints. Like, those sorts of things are
probably,
also
yeah. I mean,
looped into that
yeah,
sort of generalization too. I mean,
yeah. I mean, yeah. So we go talk about that, and it's I'm an advocate for public education, even in places where people are like, oh gosh, I don't know, should I take my kid there? It's a lot
mm-hmm.
of people that don't look. I'm like, you know what? Just that's how no, you live in. For me, I'll talk for me.
Yeah, that's all I want you to do.
I live in this community, and I want my kids to have a really good experience where they are, and so.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so you just you send them through there, and you work. You work hard. If you want to get involved with the PTA, then get with the PTA. If you want to work with the band program, get with the band program. Whatever it is, find your niche and just help it out. We're not. No one's expecting it to be perfect and it's going to be turn around in 2 years. It's sometimes it takes a while to do that, and that's. I mean, I've got 3 kids, and
what are some things for you? I mean, are there anything in your own self-diagnosis that you feel like I'm a big sort of tend the garden you can touch sort of guy. Like there are institutional problems at NYU, just like there are at Princeton or Dover High School or wherever. There are institutions mean it's a little more rigid than you and I having a conversation.
Yeah.
I don't know the president of NYU. I can't just, well, I mean, I could just go bang on his door, but I feel like I have less power in that moment.
Yeah.
The steel band is where I feel like I can really affect the most change. Like, how are you answering these questions in the institution in your band room? Like,
So
when you have kids
yeah.
in front of you?
Oh, go ahead. Oh, okay.
Sorry. Yeah. How are
No,
you
no, no.
answering? I'll end with a question. How are you
Yeah.
answering those questions, Chris? Sorry, I'm terrible. I apologize.
So what we're doing, we're talking as a music department
Mm-hmm.
is we want if students want to come in and play an instrument, we want to have an instrument for them if they are unable to get their own. So that's something that we have started doing more at my fifth and sixth grade level.
Mm-hmm.
I had a few instruments there, like we've had we have four really nice French horns. I've got
Mm-hmm.
four euphoniums. I have two student tubas. I've got some trumpet. We got some new trumpets. I have some new saxophones. We bought new trombones. I just put in another order to get a grant to buy some percussion equipment for our band room, but
Mm-hmm.
also percussion kits for students who can't afford those. I mean, so we're building up our
Mm-hmm.
own school repertoire
Mm-hmm.
of instruments inventory, so that we can have those to loan out. I was at another school for 2 years in the middle school, and part of that job was to maintain the 106 instruments in the middle school, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade that we owned, that we could. So anybody who came into our program, if they wanted to play an instrument, they could do it. I had like 36 clarinets that I had at my disposal if they wanted to come in and play. They're not always great. They don't always sound good. I've got to work on the repairs. But like, if anybody came in and is like, I want to play clarinet, but I can't afford one, I'm like, got you covered, man. Like, here we are. Just sign your name here. Promise me you're going to take care of it, that you're going to bring it, that you're going to try your best. It's yours for the year, you know. And that's what we're trying to do in this district too. I mean, because it's, you know, it used to be where there was a bunch of kids who would come in and play instruments, and they rented their own, and they would take private lessons, you know, and they would like get to the high school and they were playing some good lit. It's a different situation now. They're busy, they different things. I mean, so now we're just trying to foster this sense of like, let's keep this more as a community. Like, this is going to be a community that you can get into in fifth grade, and it's going to be your family until you get out of here in 12th grade. Like, you're going to come in with kids, friends of yours, and like, you're going to be in the same group in sixth grade and seventh and 10th and then 11th and 12th, you know, like,
Can
we're
I
trying.
can I ask you, like, what are some of are you noticing? And I'm asking out of complete ignorance here. Is there is there any difficulty in just making it known the very simplest thing, that the band program exists? Like, I have found it's been funny to me working at NYU, right next to Brooklyn, one of the largest Trinidadian populations in the world outside of Trinidad. And I've had two students at NYU that were from the Brooklyn scene, and from the Caribbean scene, and one of which, it was surprising how long I had to talk to sort of get it clear. Like, yeah, come study at NYU. He's just like, well, I just assumed, like, it wasn't even a thing. It wasn't even a possibility. It's like, what do you mean you assumed?
Yeah.
Well, it's just, it's NYU, and I'm, it was just shocked. It's just like, I feel like it's like, oh my God, for years I could have just been like walking into pan yards and being like, you can apply to NYU. And if I'd have just done that 10 years ago, my situation at NYU and my studio there would look different. I'm sure of it. But I
Yeah,
was just
right.
like, oh my God, I'm such a dumb shit, because it never crossed my mind that someone wouldn't think they couldn't apply.
Yeah, well, I mean, but those are things that sometimes you don't always know and now you do. So,
Mm-hmm.
now you can apply that to your what you need to do. One thing that we try and do, I mean, when we're talking about recruitment
Mm-hmm.
is, I mean, the marching band is visible at parades and at the football games, and sometimes we'll do band festivals. I mean, our orchestra director, she takes them out and does things. I mean, so I guess part of it is letting parents know that we're here and this is an option. Now that you say, like, what are you doing to try and ensure that your within 20 years, we've got.
Listen, to be clear, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here and hold you like accountable. I'm just curious because I know
Oh, yeah,
like it's different state to state, it's different school to school, and like
yeah.
for me
I
to
mean,
say you should do it one way because I do it at
well,
NYU
I
that
mean,
way is like silly.
and it's really, there's no. I mean, when you talk about like what's one, it's scheduling, right? It's like
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
right now, arts programs are not the things that are being tested, right? So
mm-hmm,
testable subjects are where all the resources and
mm-hmm.
time go. So like if they're going to have every day they're going to have 80 minutes, devoted to math, because it gets tested. And we're trying to build up our band program again, and I can only get them for 50 minutes a week, and they have 80
Mm-hmm.
minutes of math every day. I'd be like, wow, how much more could we do with
Well, and that's you mean you raised a good point. The testable subjects are also the metric by which the money flows.
that's right.
And I remember when I was student teaching, one of the school districts in our schools in our area where I was student teaching got labeled a. It was right when the No Child Left Behind thing was passed by Bush,
Mm-hmm.
and they started instituting the testing, a different kind of testing, and it was labeled a failing school district or a failing school, and I just remember being like so horrified on their behalf because they had like, and it's like, well, what if? But the metric was also, it didn't matter what the band program did. It didn't matter
No.
how great the arts were at that school. They could have the best band program in the world. They were still a failing school. And I just think like, again, that is a seed you planted in the year 2000. And here we are 20 years later.
Right.
I'm not wrong. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
wrong about wanting to go back and plant a new seed because, like, I was there. I saw people literally go, boop, stick the seed in and go, okay, we're testing now. The government passed a thing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's all you have to do to change the whole system is just pass a law? Like, and anyway, now we're 20 years later and we see the repercussions of that stuff. Band programs are
Well,
gone
and a
and,
lot of these students, I mean, and I was one of these students, like when
mm,
I got to seventh grade and eighth grade, junior high, like I was a band kid. I was a choir kid. I remember thinking like, oh gosh, I can't wait to like get to the middle of my day because that's like where I got to like do something that was really cool for me.
mm-hmm,
Like I'm sure kids who are interested in sports, doing track, like, all right, like I love running the 400. Like I'm gonna do everything I can to keep my grades at this point so I can run the 400. Like
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
whatever it takes. Sometimes, like okay, yeah, they should do that. But if they're not going to have those things that these kids like, oh, we got our test scores are so low, but now we've got to get rid of the arts. Now we got to get rid of it. Like you're already kind of closing off all of these outlets for these kids to, have a place where they feel like they belong, and in turn, that makes them better learners in their other classes. If
Well,
they know they've got a place to like go and like I can just be me and I can do this thing that I love for 50 minutes or for an hour and a half or whatever it would
mm-hmm.
be. You know what? Now I can come back and I can like focus on this really shitty math test or whatever. Like
Well, yeah, I mean, I was horrible at standardized testing. And it's because it didn't have any, like, all of the reading and comprehension stories had nothing to do with anything they didn't relate to anything. I mean, this is when we talk about, like, the whiteness of standardized tests. Why, like, culturally, some black people might take a standardized
right.
test and they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But okay, fine, let's cut the arts program. But what if we didn't do that? And on the reading and comprehension, what if we spent a little bit more time, we made the stories about Bach? And instead of just being like Bach was born in blah blah blah, what if we talked about him having 20 some odd kids and he had to write a
Right.
new mass every Sunday? Like, let's make the story. These people are interesting. They're
Mm-hmm.
people and they're complicated. Let's talk about. Oh, okay, math. Okay, you're going to keep the math program but cut the music. Well, why don't we teach the kids about Xenakis? Because he was
Mm-hmm.
a mathematician and an
Right.
architect,
Right.
and like let's study Persephassa or Pleiades or whatever, and let's just show them like this is what happens when you are good at math. You want to draw a parabola? Look at Metastasis by
Mm-hmm.
Xenakis. It's the Phillips Pavilion, and my head would have exploded in 10th grade if I would have. But no, I was reading about Susie going to the grocery store and she had $4.22 and she spent $1.30 of it. How much did she have? It's like,
Well, and there's a part of it too. It's like sometimes as arts teachers, music, art, library science, were kind of asked like, how are you supporting the other how are you supporting the other disciplines in your school? I was like, okay, well, okay, I don't know. I mean, we can kind of talk about, science and history, like the science of sound. I mean, that's an easy connection to make. Or the history, we can talk about that. It's an easy one. Part of me is like, how is music and art being supported in in math class or in
Mhm.
language arts? Like sometimes I feel like it could be a two-way street. Sometimes I
Yeah.
feel like it's not always a two-way street just because the emphasis is on, those core subjects that get
The
tested, like.
the music teachers, I think in my ideal school, the music teachers wouldn't be the ones teaching about Bach or Xenakis. It would have been my calculus teacher telling me about Xenakis. Like that's how my calculus teacher could have reinforced Joan Wenzel's teachings. Is like, hey,
Mhm.
that crazy mallet piece you're playing. Did you know that Xenakis used to write out of the range of the instruments? Like that's crazy, right? And I would have been like, what are you talking about? A xylophone goes up to F. He's like, not on Xenakis' world, and here's why. It's
Yeah.
because of the math. And then you could be like, and let's talk about the math, and let's talk
Right,
about how
right.
to,
Let's talk
like
about ratios, right? Let's talk
that
right. Let's talk
would
about
be
overtone series.
a far more interesting. Let's talk about rhythms and harmony as being the same thing. 3/2
Yeah.
is a fifth. Like, and when you boil all that stuff down, you can hear these mathematical. What's 6/4? Like, all of these things. It's so interesting. Except no one talks about it till you're 41.
Yeah.
And you
Well,
and it's on a podcast with Radiolab. I'm like, why is Radiolab not why not teaching every high school history course? Dan Carlin, hardcore history. Why is he not teaching history all across the United States? I mean, I learned
well,
way more about World War II because Dan Carlin talks about the way it smelled during World War II. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I'm on my high horse here now, but it's
You're going high horse. You're a podcast, man. Your rules, right?
well, I hope your school district doesn't watch this and we're like, you need to come in and talk to HR, buddy.
Yeah, no, I mean, but everything I'm saying to you, these are conversations that the music staff have, that we have with our administrators, and luckily they've been having those conversations too with us. Like, hey, how can we help you? What is it? Like our scheduling. Like, we need to really make this a priority, and our scheduling is messing that up now. The other hard thing about our job going, I can cultivate my fifth and sixth graders, and I can work hard for 2 years, and I'm getting them to like, here's what I want them to know. I want them to, can we just play through it in an octave scale? Can we read simple rhythms? Can they like have a good tone?
Mhm.
And then they go from sixth to seventh grade, right? And I give my list to the middle school director, like, hey, here's the 55 sixth graders you're gonna get. And they get there and they schedule them. They're like, yeah, but they only have like 40,
Mm.
or they have 35. Like, what happened? I'm like, oh, they got there and now they only have one elective, but now they want to do art or they want to do computer aided design, like all this cool stuff. I'm like, hell yeah, I want to do art. I want to do computer aided design. I want to do, all these other things too, but they can only pick one. And if this is the thing, is like, if kids don't feel competent on their instrument, if they don't feel like they're any good at it, like, oh, I'm no good at the trumpet, I'll just do something else. Like,
Mm.
part of it's like, oh my gosh, we need to get these kids so that they can feel like, oh, I've worked 2 years with this instrument. I feel competent. I
Mhm.
feel I can do this. And part of it's like, I can only kind of like, support them and like, you're doing great. Let's keep going at this. Like, but if they don't have we don't have the time to like really develop a good sound from them or feel like they can do well with it, they're gonna drop it. Like, who wants to do something they don't feel you're good at? Like, nobody does.
Right. Well,
And
let me ask you just a sort of a final. I've stolen almost an hour of your time here, Chris. This has flown by.
Nolan, I've freely given it to you, my friend.
Well, let me ask you a sort of a. It's a related question to everything we've been talking about, but I'm curious how the last year of what I'm assuming has been some remote teaching on your behalf. I'm guessing you've been online for part of it, similarly to myself, but
Oh yeah.
I'm curious how the last year for you, if there's any particular I don't want to say traumas or damage, but like, is there anything from this year that is like, wow, I didn't realize back a March ago that this is how I was going to be a year from now? Is there anything like that? And it could be positive, but I'm curious for you, is there anything that's like, yep, didn't expect that?
Oh, let's see. Um, I didn't expect how hard it was going to be to keep kids interested, like
Mm.
through the screen. Like there's always a, it's going to be hard. It's going to be different. You're like, all right, we got to do something different. But when kids are like in the building, it's so easy to corral them. Kids are gonna like want to
Yeah.
try and skip and get out.
Right.
But it's so much easier to like stand outside my room in the hallway full of kids going to gym, going to lunch. I can see them. I'm like, okay, where's this guy? Where's she? Like I didn't see her. Like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, and I could reach over and like, hey, you missed missed lesson today, or you missed band. Like,
Mm-hmm.
make sure you're here. Like, oh, I didn't have my instrument. Don't care. Show up anyway. Stuff that we can do anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like that, having them in the space, how important that is. Not even just like having it, but just like person to person, right? Kid to kid relationship, like that. There, it's much harder to maintain that relationship between student and teacher, and even just like mentor to whatever, the kid, like just like, how you doing today? Like you look like you're just like something's going on. Are you
Mm-hmm.
okay? It's hard to get that. Like if they're in the screen, but even sometimes they're not there. Like you can see they log in and then they ghost, right? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
man, something's going on with him, but I can't, like I can't get to him. I can't get to her because she's not there, and I can't track her down. Like that's the hardest, I think,
Mm-hmm.
part is like maintaining those personal relationships with with the kids, the students who need them
Mm-hmm.
and who want them, crave them, and not being able to do it.
Yeah. I
That's
mean,
frustrating. Um, and it's like, gosh, you can't let it get to you, but you're like, man, I hope that kid's okay.
I mean, this is the thing. I mean, I think you clearly are closer to this issue than I am. I think because you have most of the kids I'm dealing with are college kids, and so they're either in a dorm or they're in an apartment that they are renting. Some of them are in their family homes, but like you're dealing with fifth and sixth graders, and it's like there have been some Zoom screen experiences where I've learned a lot about a kid just by seeing where they live.
Yeah.
The problem is it's like I learn a piece of information that I have even less control over. Like I can't change that. I can't
Right.
put them in a new home unless it's like an abusive thing and I got to call child services. But like that's like it's kind of like information I feel like now a year out it's just like I wish I didn't know. I
Yeah.
actually feel like I could help you more when I'm in the room and I see you walk in and you avoid eye contact and you never
Mm-hmm.
have. Those are things that are just like boom, red flag. Or
Mm-hmm.
you walk in and it's like you've worn the same shirt for a week, says the guy wearing this on almost everything. But like you've worn the same shirt for a week and you kind of I can like you don't
Yeah.
like you smell unclean and I that doesn't mean I'm going to call you out in front of the class, but maybe
Right. Right.
afterwards I'm just going to ask you if you need anything. Like
Yeah.
you can't do that on a Zoom screen. And I've never had anything that intense with a student, but I can walk into a room with 35 people and be like, I know how rehearsal's going to go today.
Mm-hmm.
Based in the first 30 seconds of looking around is just boop, boop, boop. Yep, yep, yep. Nope. Keep an eye on him. She's going to be fine today. Definitely got to watch him. Like,
Right.
and it's like, cause I've done it a lot in the Zoom screen. I feel like I have to work 500 times harder for 500 times less result.
Yeah. Well, and there's something about like, if I have 8 students in my Zoom meeting, and I've got 3 clarinets and a trumpet player and trombone and 2 flutes, whatever, and then we'll put them all in a group, like, all right, cool, here's what we're gonna do together. And then it's like, great, here's what you're doing that, we're doing this, and I'm over here with the flutes. I can still hear what the clarinets are doing. I have to look over like, hey, back to the C's here, let's go, on the Zoom screen, I'm like one at a time. It's like, all right, we'll do this. I come back to the next screen, and the dude's off, and like the camera's off. I'm like, hey, camera on, please. Like I spend time there, and then I like go on to somebody else. And
Or
then
your internet crashes and
it's just like, oh my gosh, it's like opening a door, seeing if somebody's there. Like, oh, okay, they checked out to the bathroom or whatever. It's just so
yeah.
much harder to to move through that rehearsal, like that.
I remember logging on. John Haas at NYU held the first Zoom masterclass I ever participated in, and I remember at the time thinking like, oh, we did it, like we're gonna be okay, and like getting through and being like, all right, all right, I'm locked inside, but like, okay.
Yeah.
And now I'm a year out and I'm like, yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm not well. And I don't think you are either. And we're all pretending like this is normal now. And it's not,
It,
right? Right?
it isn't right, and it's frustrating. There are some days where I just, you're just like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Like, I want to feel safe. I want to feel like, like I'm not putting other teachers and people in danger, when we're, having kids come back too soon or whatever. But like, man, there is something about having people in your space and just like, all right, I can see you. Like, I can hear you better. I can actually see, like, I've had, oh, I can see that your read is on backwards.
Right.
Like your
Yeah.
ligature
Yeah.
is like the completely wrong way. Like,
Well,
things.
the thing for me is like I want to I don't I used to be afraid because of COVID. Right? I didn't want to get anybody sick and I didn't want to get sick. I have, like I smoke marijuana, like there's things that like for a lung issue, I was just like, "Oh my god, I'm a dead man." Like what I was afraid. Now I'm at the point where like I'm tired of feeling like I don't know what I'm doing. When in fact I know I'm doing the best I can and I think I'm doing an okay job. But it doesn't matter. It's not how I feel. And that is starting to wear on me in a way that it never has. Like occasionally I'll have a bad show and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And that feels shitty for that night. And then I wake up the next day and I feel less bad. This is like
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. And it's wearing on me in a way I think I didn't anticipate. And I wish I would have. The next pandemic, I'm going to be a little bit more
The
controlling about my Zoom time.
right. Next 14-month stretch.
The next 2 week, like we had with the 1 year anniversary of our 2 week quarantine is like tomorrow or something. But
Well, I remember, back in the last year in March, April, coming out of this, and there were some rumblings like, I don't know, I don't think we're going to be back at school in September. I remember thinking, no way. Over summer, we'll buck it down. 3, 4 weeks. We're all gonna like just do it. We'll get it done. We'll be back in here by September. Like people are gonna do it. Nope.
I've also been shocked at, well, not shocked. I mean, I think the social media is sort of contributing to the way politics and the tribalism within politics of like it's insane to me that masks became a, like it's clear that you're a Republican if you're not wearing one and you're a Democrat if you are. I'm just like, that is insane to me that's something we had to argue about, and I never imagined that. It's like nobody yells about seatbelts. And
and it didn't have to. It didn't have to be that way. I mean,
no,
people made it that way because it was.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I don't. We've the like this is where perception and modeling. Like if Donald Trump had just like say all the things he was saying, say all the things about vaccines and we're gonna squirt stuff in your lungs and we're gonna inject Lysol up your butt, like all that stuff. Say all that stuff. If he'd have just worn a mask while saying it all,
Yeah.
I think just the modeling. I mean, it's clear with I don't know. I don't want to go down the QAnon thing, but it's clear they'll do whatever they ask, whatever he asks. If Q just came out and said wear a mask, everybody'd be like, okay,
Yeah. That's yeah.
But that's for another podcast, our tinfoil hat podcast, Chris.
I'm sure you got a few of those lined up already.
Well, hey man, this was really fun. My policy is that the door's always open, and if there's anything else you want to chat about or just chew the fat on whatever, invite's always there. All you gotta do is message me, and I'm really grateful for you reaching out. This was really great. I'm sorry we spent so much time talking about Joan, but I think she's a mutual heroine of ours, so I don't feel that bad about it. But I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. It was good to chat with you and good to hang.
Well, I'll give you a heads up when this is. I'm very slow with editing these and getting them ready, so I'll give you a heads up whenever I'm ready. But until the next time I see you, look up Chester. He's a great guy. I think you'll enjoy hanging. He's a great musician. But otherwise, stay safe and healthy, and I hope to chat soon.
Yeah, you too. All right.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Bye.
Oh, yeah. Talk to you later.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. This podcast is brought to you by Liquid Drum, liquiddrum.com down in Waco, Texas. My good friend Todd Meehan runs an amazing percussion company down there. Great merch, great content. Check him out, liquiddrum.com. Also, Kyle Dunleavy, dunleavypans.com, Dunleavy pans.com. Kyle Dunleavy makes and builds all the steel drums that I perform and teach on in So Percussion, as well as at NYU and Princeton. He's an amazing tuner, builder, just a really nice guy, very dependable. Check him out. If you are interested at all in steel pan advocacy, want to learn more about the goings-on in pan in Brooklyn, check out paninmotion.com. My good friend Kendall Williams, Jerry Guy, Trisha Guy, and Arisha John run an amazing organization called paninmotion.com. Check them out. And finally, Alejandro Mirage runs an amazing clothing apparel company in Brooklyn that is steel pan centric. You can check him out at mangochow, CHOW, clothing.com. I own a bunch of his shirts. They're amazing, very stylish, beautifully made. Check them out. mangochowclothing.com. Okay, hope you're well. Talk to you soon. Bye.